Hey everyone, glad to see you all here. Today we're going over your trades. I'll tell you what worked, what didn't, and what's good. Not a bad trade. Who is that? All right, this one's from Raun Jalamanov. I'm going to show you the pros and cons. Let's start with the daily chart. Always start with that one. So here we've got what looks like a return. The asset went from 55 to 15 cents, but this wasn't a pump trade because the bars were heavy. The reversal starts here. Now pros, yeah, there's some room to move, but the downside, there's no clear level. What you marked is more like a local pause. In other words, there are no previous levels. And without strong levels, it's tough to get a clean entry. If you switch to the 5-minute chart, it does show a local level and a reaction. There was a bounce. But if you were aiming to trade a primary breakout, you should have done it on this bar. What you entered was a secondary breakout, and it likely wasn't going to work. If you had entered on the initial breakout, the trade would have been correct. When a level is clean and hasn't been broken out before, it's better to enter on the first breakout. You'll be standing where the impulse begins, where the ATR begins. So pay close attention to whether it's a primary or secondary breakout. As for the trade, I'd give it a 4 out of 5. It's a decent trade, it just didn't work out. Could it have worked from that spot? Sure, but I wouldn't have entered it, to be honest. The reason for this is pretty simple. This is a daily chart. Look at the way it pulls back. Looking at the daily chart in this case, there's no place to set a correct stop loss. I'm not a big fan of such trades. If the asset is going up, it should actually go up. As far as the daily chart goes, it's quite weak. 5-minute chart? Yeah, good entry. Okay, Lyosha Komitsky, let's check the daily chart first. Long position, breakout, the upper boundary of a rollback. I didn't see the trade itself, but usually this trade is the upper boundary of a rollback. You got that right. Typically, though, it's the upper boundary of a rollback. The asset normally goes down, not up. In other words, if you had drawn the level around the false breakout, it would have been correct. You would have triggered this false breakout trade, and it would have been a better entry. That's why the upward breakout failed here on the daily chart. There were no preconditions for going long. Keep one thing in mind. If you wish to enter, do that on a false breakout. Anyone who's done my courses knows this is the so-called upper boundary of the rollback during a downward trend. This is typically an entry point into a short position, not a long one. So yeah, it's clear you didn't study, because those who did know that this is an upper boundary of a pullback, and it's for short positions. Let's keep going. So look carefully. What's good and what's bad? Igor, this trade was pretty tough. Honestly, I got a bit lucky here too. I recommended going along with this one in the PRO channel, but there was definitely some luck involved. You see, we couldn't break out the resistance level and go up the first time, the second time, and even the third. However, what saved this trade was the fact that there was a decent pullback in the asset. If you're planning to trade breakouts, you really need to wait for a proper rollback. If the price is going up and down near the level, there should definitely be a pullback. From the hourly charts perspective, it looked rough. Really tough hourly chart and a daily chart with strong resistance. Pretty heavy setup overall. I know I recommended it a bit higher, but the setup itself was hard to work with. There's definitely an element of luck here. What kind of luck? Well, the execution on the low time frame was clean, no complaints there, but the coin itself was just really, really heavy. Okay, let's see what we've got next. No complaints, even though there was a paranormal level in this trade. Not sure, but you had a pretty tight stop loss. Nothing wrong with that. Totally normal trade. Stop was good. Entry was clean. Setup looked fine. It just didn't move. Nothing bad at all. So Maxim Rukov, a solid level. Now we're looking at it after the fact. But back then, you had to rely on what the hourly chart showed. On the plus side, the price confirmed the level by precisely touching it. Look, I'll show you. That's a strong signal. I really like assets like this. When you've got a precise touch like that, it tells you there's a level there. And if there's a level, then you've got a valid entry to work with. I wouldn't have set the break-even point here. There was empty space below. Max, you didn't need to do that. It was a good trade. Great entry just under the level. Setting the break-even point was unnecessary. Look, the break-even point only makes sense when you've had a string of trades where it went against you. That's the only time it's really worth doing. Otherwise, there's no real point in setting it. Look, there's one big plus here. This setup is what we call no impulse where it should be. What does that tell us? It means there's a really strong level right there. The level itself, no complaints at all. Who's this? Ektior, nice work. You can see we've got a solid level. The asset enters the short zone and then returns through the false breakout because the breakout didn't happen where it should have. In other words, it entered the short zone, but there was no impulse. If you see that there is no impulse where it should be, it's a great setup to trade a false breakout. Really nice setup, solid stop loss, solid take profit, and a big one too. Good job. Awesome. So what do we have here? This is the daily chart and buyout bar. Agreed. Who's this? Nikita. Recognized you right away. Yeah, well done. That's a very nice trade. You got the take profit. Stop loss was solid. I might have tightened the stop just a bit, but overall, great work. Nikitos, really well done. So, breakout of 1.4180. Very good trade. Now, look, here's the difference compared to that earlier trade. With the stop, we hit, bounced off, then came back, hovered, which tells you there's a limit player sitting there. Good setup overall. Next time, I'd throw in a short time frame too. Really solid trade, plenty of room for movement, definitely one you could hold. So, a close retest. Yeah, I agree. There's a level emptiness, so let's take a look. Nothing critical here. The only issue is you didn't get in on the first attempt. First try failed, second failed, third, fourth, fifth. You see where this is going. That's the problem. Yeah, it's a different coin, ALCH, but same pattern. You're entering when the price is already going up and down near the level, which means there won't be any impulse. And that's exactly why you ended up with a stop loss. Same situation, just repeating itself.